Hi, this is Tuncay Tuncer, and you are listening to the Banking and Finance Insider podcast.
Hello, and thank you for joining me in this episode where each month we publish an interview with one of the industry experts to talk about different topics related to the banking and financial sector in the UAE. Let's dive in. Future banking will be invisible, connected, insight-driven, and purposeful. And to compete in a world with increasingly blurred boundaries, where smart devices and platforms can deliver the banking experience and ride-sharing apps can supply loans, banks must determine and play to their strengths. My name is Safiya Al-Shehi. I work here at EIBFS, and today I'm here with Mr.Tuncay Tuncer, Group Executive Director, Online and Mobile Banking, Head of Digital UAE at Standard Chartered Bank. Welcome, Mr. Tuncay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Safiya. Thanks for hosting me today.
So I would like to start with getting to know you more, starting from your name. You have a unique name, Tuncay Tuncer. So can you talk to me more about this name? Who are you and where are you from? When did you start all this?
So my name is Tuncay Tuncer. I am from Turkey, as you said. My name is a little bit unique. Thanks for giving me opportunity to explain the name. It is Tuncay. In Turkey, we call the letter C as J. It is a little bit different than the universal language. As you heard, I'm from Turkey, so I am a management engineer as a background. I have been graduated from Istanbul Technical University in Istanbul. And since I graduated, I have been working in the industry. It has been more than 15 years now, I can say. So I didn't start my career in banking initially. I started my career in e-commerce companies. But since then, of course, since the business is an e-commerce business, I have been always dealing with the digital transformation, e-commerce, and such kind of activities as a product manager, as a business development manager. Also, this is what I am doing as a product owner. I've worked in different, areas of the business for digital related things. After spending my early years in e-commerce, I moved to banks, and I have worked in 3 of the top banks in Turkey, which are, including TEB, BNP Paribas, Yapı Kredi, and Akbank. Lastly, I was heading the mobile banking department for Akbank in Turkey. And then in 2013, I moved to Dubai, and my expat career has started with Emirates NBD. I have been hired by Emirates NBD as the head of mobile financial services in 2013. It was really an interesting move for me because in Turkey, the market is very advanced in terms of digital transformation. And in 2013, back on these days, in UAE, it was just starting. So the experience that we had in Turkey was very beneficial and it worked a lot for me when I come to here as Emirates NBD to Emirates NBD. And our vision was very clear at that point. We said in UAE, we are going to change the way that people do banking. So that was the purpose. And we formed up a team at Emirates NBD, a brilliant team, an excellent team, and everything starts an excellent team to do the digital transformation there. And since then, I have been in the market. I have been working closely with the market in UAE and also with the other players in the Gulf. In 2018, I have moved to Standard Chartered Bank. And since then, in the group, across the group, I have been taking roles to, manage the entire mobile banking and mobile financial services in the retail markets for Standard Chartered Bank. And back in 2019, I was in Singapore, by the way, with my role. I moved to Singapore. I lived there in 2 years and then come back to Dubai again. Now, currently, I'm continuing my roles and also adding the head of UAE role for the digital banking for Standard Chartered Group. So this is how I am in terms of professional life. For personal life, I'm married. I have 2 kids. They both grow up here. They are growing up here actually currently still. So it is a great pleasure to be in a very open, very innovative country like UAE. It is making things really easier for us to, as a family, as an expat, and as a professional also. So I'm just enjoying it.
MashaAllah, God bless your family. And what an interesting professional background, Mr. Tuncay. The only thing I know about Turkey that, despite the shows, of course, like there are two favorite authors, Alif Shafak and Orhan Pamuk. So I grew up reading them. So I think I can connect now when you talk about Turkey and how the technological advancement support the banking industry in Turkey back there and here also grabbing your own professional experience and bringing all that knowledge to the industry here. So if we are going to talk about future banking, how can we define future banking? And is it about tools and platforms, or it's also related to human interaction with machines?
Future of banking, of course, is relying on technology a lot. So the only caveat here that we need to think about is technology is just an enabler. So at the end of the day, when you put technology on the center of everything, when you talk about digital banking, there might be some understanding about the trends and the concepts and the way that the business is growing. We just need to make it very clear for everyone who is listening to us. Technology is just an enabler. It is. I'm just underlining it a lot for every type of conversations that we are doing. Technology is an enabler. When you take it that way, of course, it is about creating platforms. It is about the tools that you are using, but it is more about positioning the customer, positioning the human factor at the center of everything. And when it comes to customers, we are not only talking about external customers who are consuming these services. We are also talking about internal customers who are actually making the things happen in banking. So I'm talking about my colleagues who are working in the banks and also our partners, our stakeholders who are collaborating with us to create the future of banking. So, banking is moving, banking is changing. It is not the same compared to 50 years ago. I must say 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago, it is changing a lot because every day a new technological development is happening. And as the banks, similar to other industries also, we all need to align ourselves and adapt ourselves to the changes in the technological side. Mm-hmm. So when we put it that way, it is very important that technology is, sitting as an enabler, and more importantly, journeys that we are creating for the customers about becoming a customer, borrowing money, growing our wealth, buying a home, buying a car, financing our businesses. All of these kind of journeys are becoming more and more important and should be in the focus of future of bankers. Mm-hmm. Human interaction is, there's also, again, with the technology, as I mentioned, there is always a kind of dilemma in professionals across banking industry and also in other industries as well. Are we moving away from humans? Are we replacing the humans with machines, with the processes? Partially, yes, but this is not a true replacement. Actually, we are just seeing that creating efficiency in certain areas are crucial with the use of technology. Mm-hmm. We see that some of the things can be easily done with the machines with a faster way, of course, with a cheaper way to benefit the business, but also to create better experiences, to make things more straight through for the consumers as well. So it's a win-win situation. However, the people that we are moving away from these roles and the roles which are becoming redundant doesn't mean that we are moving away from these people to other areas. Actually, there are other opportunities being created. So these people who we are moving away from these roles are actually transferred to other stages. So we still need human. At the end of the day, it's all about creating relationship. And you know it very well. We are all Middle Easterns. In Middle East, we really appreciate the way that we interact with people. So this is why I still believe that future of banking is really depending on human interactions.
Saying that, what are the key trends that are changing the banking landscape in the UAE especially?
Definitely with the technology and with the digitization efforts happening across the UAE and across in the entire world, open banking is becoming the most crucial thing for people, and we need to understand what open banking means. So open banking is actually nothing but it's all about connecting all the players in the ecosystem to each other by using the right technologies. So it is making things much more transparent. It is making people access the information transparently and easily, without any, additional effort that they are doing today. So think like that. Today, if you are banking with Bank A, and if you are holding a credit card from Bank B, and if you are holding another loan for your car or for your mortgage from Bank C, you are putting an extra effort to go from one bank to another to check your, financials, to check your financial health, to do your transactions, and to make sure that everything is in place, right? Open banking is simply creating a unified view across all your financials thanks to the technology, again, as an enabler, and making things effortless for you moving forward to connect all your financial information across all these banks into one single area. So it is one of the key trends that we can mention. The second thing is eKYC, which is know your customer processes. Today, we are spending a lot of effort, and it is from a security perspective, it is from knowing the customer perspective, regulatory perspective, and also our own safety, for the customer's own safety. It's another crucial thing, and UAE is having a lot of efforts on that area to simplify the process, thanks to the government support also. eKYC is another thing. I can say neobanks is the third thing. Neobanks are the digital-only banks that are popping up across the country. It is coming with the standalone players now, with the new banking licenses being shared with different groups, also the financial industry, and also by the banks, traditional banks who are putting their investment in the industry. Neobanks or challenger banks are coming as the trend. Fourth thing is SME banking, because in UAE there's a huge opportunity for SME banking, and we are seeing for the past couple of years the big traditional players and as well as the standalone players in the market, fintechs coming into the area for SME focus. And finally, especially for retail banking and also for business banking, also payments. Payments is another trend that is shaping up. These are all functional related, or again, journey related capabilities. But we need to understand that these trends are also backed up and supported by some of the enablers, such as data. Data is key. It is gold. It is a cliche these days to say it, but it is definitely a true cliche. So data is gold. Data-driven everything is shaping up all these trends as the underlying technology. Blockchain kind of AI, artificial intelligence, blockchain kind of technologies are also key, supporters for these trends. I don't call them as trends because, in my opinion, again, as I mentioned in the previous question, they are all enablers from a technology standpoint. So these are my views about the trends in the UAE.
Thank you so much for differentiating between all these concepts, because as you said, people sometimes tend to misunderstand all these concepts. Sometimes they mix open banks with digital banks. So how can banks remain relevant with all these key trends?
It's an excellent question, and actually it is $1 million question to solve for, right? Because every bank is actually worried about that. I am joining conferences, I am attending conferences or programs like that, and in each conference these days, this is the question: how we can make banks, stay relevant and remain relevant on these changes. So it is both easy and hard. Easy to say, but hard to implement. The answer is easy to find out, figure out, but hard to implement. Now, let's start with the easy part. First of all, to stay relevant, banks need to focus on their investments into key areas. Digital transformation topic is a huge topic. So I always, being in, parts of the banks who are doing huge amount of efforts, who are spending huge amount of efforts on digital transformation, what I learned personally so far is breaking down the transformation efforts and actually focusing the efforts on significant areas such as where is the main pain point, what is the purpose that the particular bank, because each transformation effort differs from bank to bank. At Standard Chartered, we had a different vision as a global player in the market. It is completely different than what we used to have in the past in Emirates MBD, for example. And these are two banks who are serving to the same market. So I can definitely say that, first of all, defining the goal and then breaking down the efforts into achievable targets is key. So banks should define their transformations, strategy with a clear focus. And then they should be choosing the right partners, because at the end of the day, banks are always falling into this dilemma. Can we do this alone? Can we do this with our own resources? Banks have amazing power in terms of money, in terms of assets. Actually, banks have all the power to do this stuff by themselves. But the question should be asked, why? Why we need to do it? Do we really need to do it by ourselves? Because there is expertise sitting outside of banking industry, which can definitely help with the focus that the banks are setting up. So partnerships
in the tech area.
Exactly. In the tech area, not only in actually tech area is the main area, but also in business partnerships as well. Because at the end of the day, remember, I will be always reminding during this conversation, journeys are key. And it is not only about technology focus. You need to create value propositions to complete the customer journeys, and to enable that, you need to be open to any type of partnerships and fintech players and ecosystem players on that one. And finally, I just actually mentioned, and I want to underline it again, product value proposition is the key for banks. So there are different players coming. Big techs are also coming into the banking. We are talking about Amazon, Google, Uber, Karim, these kind of players who are actually interested in coming into the financial ecosystem and providing services for the customers. And customers are, to be honest, they are getting more and more ready every day to consume these services from these players. So when we look at that one, is this the ending of banking? I don't think so. Banks have huge opportunity, because bank keeps the knowledge, they keep the customer base, and this is very valuable. None of the key, fintechs, none of the ecosystem players can take this knowledge, which has been created over hundreds of years, easily within a couple of years, But they have the power of changing it. So the focus to remain, relevant on this area, banks should know their main strengths, which is their knowledge, which is their, experience in the area, their commitment to the regulations and their ownership of all these processes on this area. They should know it, but they should be changing and updating their product value propositions with the new demand coming from the market. So I believe these are the main things to stay relevant in this era.
Well said. Do you agree that the future of banking is based on trust?
It was always based on trust, and it will always stay like that. Maybe in Europe, there are slightly different views when it comes to looking at trust issue. Everybody has their own understanding, but when it comes to our region here in across the MENA, we are banking with our father's bank or mother's bank. I mean, this is how our family bank is how we start our relationship. I'm sure it's the same for you, Safi. I mean, when your family says that, it is like a kind of family tradition. I worked with Bank A, and my father was working with Bank A. This is why I opened my account. Basically, your parents were maybe opening the first account that you had, so you could just continue your relationship. And it is a very important value for the banks to rely on. But these days, there are a lot of alternatives. There are more alternatives than ever. In UAE, more than 50 banks we have in the country. There are lots of new players coming up, and they are equally creating good opportunities, financial opportunities, need-based opportunities for the clients. When I want to buy a car, I don't necessarily need to look for a bank anymore. When I want to take a mortgage, I am going to Dubizzle or Property Finder before I go and talk to my bank, because they are also providing me some insights about my eligibility for getting a loan. So these are very interesting things. However, of course, the game changer and the main thing will still be, raising on trust. But trust today, the way that we need to understand is changing in one area. Convenience is the biggest factor which is supporting trust these days. If there is no convenience, since there are other players in the market, the trust element can be easily lost because people are now having more opportunities, as we just discussed. So trust factor is still important, but it needs to be heavily supported with the convenience element for the customer experience.
So basically answering the question of why we are doing this, and also not to forget the other issues that are related to the customers themselves, like generations gap, for example.
Exactly. That's a very important point also. The generation gap is narrowing down. When we look at the different generations or the definitions of different generations in the history, we were talking about a decade maybe, or more than a decade to change a generation. Since 1985, or let's say after post 1990s, nearly almost every year is bringing their own generation. I'm seeing it from my kids also around me. I mean, when you become parents and you start growing up kids, you can see that their attitude, their behaviors are completely different. This is why it is a little bit hard to adapt for banks, because you need to be more open. You need to be understanding your customers to get this trust factor in place. However, again, the opportunities, it is just expanding a new way of working for the banks. Be more open, be on the field, take more insights from the customers and try to digest it in an agile way, test, learn, and then even deploy, test, learn and deploy, and see it how it is going and change it rapidly. That's how the banking industry should be creating the trust factor. This is why I mentioned about the convenience element. I believe it's a key one to support the trust element factor here.
In relation with the topic of the generations gap, and also you just mentioned that now we have new type of banks, which are like a total digital banks. So are they tough competitors for the giant ones, the old ones? And how can digital banking leverage customers' experience?
The answer is depending on the bank itself again. The banks need to answer this question. Look, I have worked with different banks in my career, and the ones who are actually positioning themselves as the leaders in the industry, they never ever get impacted from the fintechs. Actually, they always find a way to collaborate with the fintechs to avoid any issues that they can that they can face with. Yes, they are creating a huge threat factor. Why? Because they are actually chasing the legacy system of the banks, and this is a very natural thing. They are taking they are doing things in a very good way, actually, and it is at the end of the day the customers are benefiting from it. So I like the way that these players are shaping up the industry. I like the way that these players are challenging the industry, because at the end of the day, when you have good competition, this is the only way to create better services and uplift your gameplay and strategy. So fintechs and these players are definitely doing it. Starting from Europe, we all see that, and in US also, both in US and Europe, we see that these guys are doing really great job to challenge the banks, and they are shaping up the banking industry with the new norms. When we look at the strong markets, such as, again, one of them is where I am coming from, Turkey, Spain, some Middle and Eastern European countries such as Poland, etc. We see that challenger banks are not able to penetrate as they do in other markets where the traditional banks are failing to compete with them. This is why I mentioned it all depends how and where you are operating. Okay, and this is also showing us something. We should, as traditional banks, we should not fear from them. We should just take it in a positive way, this competition, and just need to uplift our gameplay. In a global bank like Standard Chartered Bank, for example, we are definitely doing that. I'm really proud of being part of a global organization, operating in different markets, where we see a lot of players just jumping into the competition and making our game, uplifting our game together with us. Because at the end of the day, we are serving the same customer pool. We are actually pitching for the same customer, and we are finding ways to collaborate together. For example, we are merging efforts for enabling better payments and transfers opportunities for much cheaper rates, for faster transactions for the customers. We are enabling our banking platforms as a service as a platform mentality in markets like Indonesia, for example, in Standard Chartered Group, where we are helping the ecosystem players to create opportunities. Now, when it comes to UAE also, as Standard Chartered is a global player, we are always partnering with different ecosystem players in the market, fintechs and non-fintechs also, but who are actually creating opportunities in the financial industries to grow up our business together. And we are seeing a lot of win-win situations here. To cut the long story short, in my opinion, it is not a threat when you position it rightly. It is a great opportunity both for fintechs to grow and expand their businesses and for the banks to lift up their games and stay relevant with the competition.
Yes. Talking about the current global situation, how did banks capitalize on the COVID-19 driven pace of change and innovation?
So it was a tough year for everyone, and it is still going on. It is very tough. It is like unforeseen scenario, right? Everyone actually caught up a little bit unprepared for the situation. But when it comes to digital banking, actually, of course, pandemic is a very bad thing, but digital banking actually benefited from pandemic a lot. So if you remember in the beginning of the conversation, we mentioned about the digital transformation efforts that the banks are doing and how they are focusing on digital transformation. First of all, the pandemic situation make everyone recognize that digital is not a kind of support functionality for the banks to run their business. Actually, this is their foundation to serve their businesses, because when lockdowns happened and when people couldn't move outside of their homes, there was only one opportunity for the banks to reach out to customers. It is digital channels. So the banks who were ready, like us, for example, in Standard Chartered, who were ready with this, we see that we are able to serve our customers even more than ever. Our digital penetration rates went up, our digital sales go up, because think like that. We are talking with colleagues. I'm also giving an example from my own wife. She was not doing any orders for supermarkets or any other stuff from the app. She just started interacting with more digital players during the pandemic, and this opened up other opportunities. She became more curious about other apps, other banks, etc. All these kind of institutions. She just started looking at, okay, there is an app for this also. Let me use it.
I recently made that shift.
Exactly, and this created a good opportunity for everyone. Everyone looked around and said that, oh, there is an app for everything. So we can do this. We don't necessarily need to go time. Of course, having said that, human interaction is still key, but this gave a huge focus for banks to put their digital transformation efforts into a better shape, focus on the right area, which is things like digital onboarding and digital sales, and using the data that is being generated by the customers and turn it back into a more beneficial way to the clients. All these kind of things actually shaped up. As a result, from commercialization perspective, of course, every metric that we are, following up in terms of digital penetration and adoption, our, digital transaction rates, our, P&Ls actually across all areas, reducing the cost for serving the customers and, increasing our revenues through digital sales because we approach more customers more than ever. This is what happened during the pandemic situation. And it is still happening. Now we are seeing that all the banks are shaping up across the UAE. It is great to see that all the banks are contributing it with their maximum level, and it's a great opportunity for UAE banking and financial sector actually.
As we agreed, digitalization is a cornerstone in this industry. So definitely. How do you prepare your team to be part of the new movement?
As Standard Chartered Bank, actually, we are one of the first banks in the world who adopted the new ways of working and making our staff available to work from home during these journeys. We created a lot of opportunities for our staff. And to be honest with you, in the beginning, people were a little bit questioning that approach, because all of us have different. It's very. We have our own ways of working. We have our own traditions. It's not easy to adapt. Stopping coming to office every day, interacting with colleagues, friends, doing coffee chats with friends. I mean, these are things that we are missing, right? So we were questioning how this is going to happen. There are definitely key roles. It is not possible for them to move them away from their office setup and create this setup back their homes, because it requires a lot of investment. It requires a lot of technological development to do that. But from a digital banking perspective, we are digital people. This is our nature. So it was easier than the rest of the bank for us, for our teams on the digital banking side, to make the adoption. So what we did is, first of all, we created some set of rules for our, it's not a kind of rule actually, agreements, let me put it that way. We sit together with the teams and we said, let's agree, guys, how we are going to work together during this pandemic, because it is very tough. It's not only tough because of the health issues that we are having, psychologically, physically, it is not easy to stay in front of a screen, looking at a screen and talking to people virtually. As you can imagine, I'm sure it is happening to everyone who is listening us on this podcast. Our meetings started becoming back-to-back ones. So we are closing one session and moving to the next one without having any proper break. A number of hours is now lost in between. So sometimes we are starting a call at 7 a.m. in the morning. We see that it is urgent. Then we might be having another call at 10 p.m. in the evening. The routines have changed. So first of all, we tried to create and agree on our routines with the team. We said, this is how we should be working together. This is how we should be working with our stakeholders at the end of the day. And then based on that, we try to adapt ourselves. So far, everything is going well. Our productivity, not remained saved actually, it increased because people are feeling more comfortable with the way. But also, of course, to be honest with you, I must say that we really missed the old ways of working also, where we interact with colleagues more. It reduced significantly, and we are missing that interaction. But, this is not, creating any disefficiency, let me put it that way, on the way that we work together.
When we talk about adaptation, what about regulatory and institutional laws?
Life is changing. Pandemic showed that interactions are changing. We just talked about how the commercialization angle is changing and how the banks are changing their, business models based on the customer behaviors. And you also, Saber, you also mentioned that your, for example, interaction with players or your favorite stores or favorite companies change now. You are more digital, right? So when you move to digital more and more, of course, there are different cases are happening. So from regulations perspective, we should expect, and this is what is happening today in the UAE, we should expect updates and changes to consumer protection laws, how businesses interact with customers, how to run businesses efficiently in the markets from an economy standpoint and also from a customer experience standpoint. So because everything is changing. So this is what is happening in the market. We are now focusing on more customer focused interactions. We are changing the way based on these expectations. Again, in UAE, as one of the highest penetrated countries in the world across the globe for digital, we were seeing that although penetration was high, adoption was low. It was not equally going at the same level. When we talk about penetration, for example, in UAE, everyone has a smartphone. There is a purchasing power in UAE. Yes. There is a good economy. People can access to the latest devices, and we do so. I remember even the days that now, these stores are all open across the country. But I remember the days where, for example, Apple announced a new iPhone, even if it started officially being sold here in the market. I remember that we were going and buying from some shops, some stands in the shopping malls, etc. So UAE never ever had a problem about penetration. But when it comes to usage, which is adoption, people were only using these high-end devices, expensive devices, just to play games or message to each other. Now this is changing.
Yes.
As we just discussed, they are using it for their daily life. They are
for the sake of the experience itself.
Exactly,
yes.
Exactly. They are using it for the sake of experience itself. They are using more banking transactions. They are using for ordering food. They are even calling the company to fill up the gas tank for their car. So this is what is happening in the market. Now, while this is the case, regulations should be, of course, prepared to uplift the game to protect the customers more in the age of security or digital security, and to protect the customer data and making sure that the policies are properly positioned by every business contributing to the digital in the market.
So what are the challenges versus opportunities for the UAE workforce?
The challenges are some of the jobs, as we discussed, is becoming redundant with the new technologies coming up. So the technology itself is replacing some of the requirements that the banking industry has today. It is sometimes happening on for example, things on the customer service in the branches. It is sometimes happening on, operational areas, technology areas even, because again, technology is enabling us some level of efficiencies, and banks are definitely taking their game up to benefit from these efficiencies. So people who are working in these areas might find themselves and their roles redundant, with these developments. But again, all these kind of issues are creating equal opportunities. So, for example, if a technology is being created, it is not just to close a gap and making sure that, hey, Tuncay is not needed anymore in this area. Tuncay should be now sitting back home and looking for another job. It is not the case, actually. When you create a new functionality or a new capability with the technology, there are side requirements coming up. So there are different new opportunities are being created. For example, one of the things is, yes, we are not now manually processing documents when we are opening accounts. We don't necessarily need someone to take the copy of the passport or Emirates ID in the branch and just submit it back to the operations, etc., and done. The job is done. Yes, we don't need this person, but still we need these people to understand and serve on the customers and maybe interact with them in a different way to sell different products, or just to understand the different needs of the customer, not only selling the products, but also trying to solve a problem of the customer, which is actually more value-added service than just taking a copy of a document on the back office or something like that, right? So this is why the opportunity here is, this is the hard part, but everyone needs to understand. Learning never ends. It's a lifetime opportunity for us. You mentioned that reading books, everything that we are doing, it's all valuable assets, right? So what we need to do is, we just need to be open for the new opportunities, and we should not hesitate to try new stuff and learn new stuff. I am working today on frontline to welcome the customers. Tomorrow, I will be, while I was doing the welcoming, if it is not needed tomorrow, I will be changing my opportunity and my job title to ask, rather than saying only welcome, I should say, how can I help you today? So this is the opportunity that people need to understand.
By upskilling ourselves.
Exactly.
Yes. Exactly.
And there is great opportunities. It is these days during the pandemic also. There were great opportunities. Most of the universities, the best ones like Harvard, Stanford, etc. They open their libraries. They open their educational programs to everyone to say that these are the things that you can learn. These are the things to uplift your game. So that's absolutely the key message that I want to give to everyone here. There are great opportunities. And one more thing for UAE. Emiratization efforts is actually happening a lot. So it is great for the UAE nationals to become part of the journeys in each and every angle. And with the support of the government and with the following the instructions coming from the government, I believe it is shaping the lifestyle, actually, the entire UAE lifestyle in a very positive way. So I would like to encourage everyone to look around and just try to upskill their skill set to see the opportunities. There are a lot of them.
Tips for leaders to drive bold transformation in banks over the coming years.
First of all, focus. This is what I must say. Whatever you are doing, you need to focus. As a leader, if you lose your focus and if you try to do everything at the same time, I believe this is making things a little bit harder for everyone. So you need to focus your goal, because people are looking at you and they are willing to hear from you a clear direction about what they need to do in these days for moving to digital and shaping up the digital transformation. So that's number one. Number two, always look at data. Data is key, data is gold, and try to listen what the customers are saying by understanding the data properly. And when I say data, I think one of the habits that leaders, especially traditional leaders, should stop is looking on the bottom of the Excel tables, which shows the sums and the total numbers. This doesn't necessarily lead leaders to the right direction in these days. They need to look at the upper part of the table and try to question the numbers above more than ever in today's age in digital. Because as you rightly mentioned, Safia, generations are changing, their expectations are changing. And you cannot just make one-size-fits-all approach to shape up your business. And the third thing for leaders is create good teams, believe in them, and encourage your people. That's one of the main strengths of a leader, to trust and create a good ecosystem around themselves. You cannot do things yourself. It is not a good leadership style. You should empower the teams and you should eliminate the fear factor, which is unfortunately common in our market, in our region a lot. People always look to leaders, they hide stuff. They are not transparent enough because they always fear about losing their job, losing the opportunities. If we would like to step up our game in the age of digital, and if you would like to compete with the best ones across the globe, you should know that these guys are making it happen with a good team collaboration. They are open. This is a cultural shift. So do this cultural shift, empower your teams, and make sure that you are facilitating the right environment for them to do their job. So these are my suggestions for the leaders in the industry.
Finally, and I would quote, my personal goal is to be one of the best professionals in the digital space across the world and working hard to achieve this goal. So what is your best way, best plan, blueprint, if I may call it, to achieve that purpose?
I feel very lucky in my career. I had the privilege to work with great people, great-minded people, and great organizations who really owns what I am trying to achieve, because it's not a one person, one man show at the end of the day. It's the whole entire organization. In the banks in Turkey, Emirates NBD, Standard Chartered, all these banks were having clear visions when it comes to digitization. This is why I always set up my game to say that let's set up the bar high, become a global profile to make sure that digital transformation is happening not only in banking but across all industries around us. Because at the end of the day, it is not a one sector job. It is all about the ecosystem that you are creating it. To be able to do that, what I am doing, first of all, I want to stay relevant on everything that we are doing. So I am trying to continuously do observations from the customers, from the markets, from the people that we are interacting with. This is the key for my success. I know it. So this is why I'm trying to do conversations with different people from different groups, different ethnicities, different backgrounds. That is just giving me a lot of opportunity to understand what they require, what they need on their day-to-day basis for their financial requirements. So that's the one thing that I am doing. The second thing is, again, building up, actually saving people is more important than saving money. So trying to make more people around me, especially the colleagues that we are working on, I'm trying to really make sure that these people are experts in their area to, uplift my, skill set to do that. So this is what the second thing that I do. And third, of course, just work hard, tirelessly. Sometimes it is even, to be honest with you, as a father, it is hard to balance the time that we are spending for work, for our career ambition. But as Elon Musk says, a person who is working 40, 45 hours a week only, which is the normal working hours, these are not the people that can change the world. So we need to push our efforts a little bit up. We need to uplift our game. So we need to push our limits a little bit more. And we need to increase the time that we spend to change the world and make it a better place. So this is my ambition from a financial sector perspective.
I am fascinated by this conversation, and I have learned a lot from you, Mr. Tuncay Tuncer. It was my pleasure to host you in today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for giving the opportunity. It was indeed a great conversation, Safia. Thanks for hosting me today.
And to our listeners, until we meet, stay safe and keep growing.